She pushed me on a Tuesday. It wasn't even dramatic. Just her palm on my chest and a half-smile that didn't match her eyes. My heel caught the step. I went down. My shoulder slammed into the ground, and my phone spun across the floor like a dropped coin. Somewhere behind me, I heard her friends scream laughing. What gets me, though, what I still can't wrap my head around, is the fact that she didn't check if I was okay. No gasp. No, oh my God. Just a soft chuckle and, I swear to you, someone whispering, "You owe me 20. I lay there with my cheek pressed to cold tile, thinking, this is how I find out I'm not real to her anymore. Let me explain. Or try to. Because even now, I'm not sure what's more embarrassing, the fall or the fact that it took me this long to see it coming. This was a game to them. A dare. Some grotesque performance art about control or humiliation or, I don't know. Proving how much of someone you can erase while they're still standing there, blinking, asking what they did wrong. I wasn't even supposed to be at that dinner. They planned it last minute, apparently. A team-building night for her new department, but somehow I got invited. Maybe to fill a seat. Maybe as a prop. Maybe because someone wanted to see what would happen. There were 8 of us at the long table. They ordered for me without asking. The music was loud, the drinks were overpriced, and they kept playing some kind of drinking game that I didn't understand. Every time someone tapped the bottom of their glass twice, someone else had to accept the dare. I was halfway through my sparkling water when Sadie got dared. The dare? Do something to your husband that you'd never get away with twice. She didn't even pause. And that's when she stood up, walked over, and pushed me. In front of everyone. No warning. No context. Not even eye contact. I didn't say anything. Not then. I just got up, brushed off my sleeves, and picked up my phone. My lock screen was cracked. I could see a web of tiny fractures running across my nephew's face in the photo. I looked at her. She was already sitting back down, sipping her wine, laughing so hard she wiped her eyes with a cloth napkin. Someone muttered, "He's fine." It was a joke. Was it? Because I didn't feel like someone who had just been the butt of a joke. I felt like an object in a room full of people who no longer saw me as human. And that feeling, that cold, echoing realization, is what made me leave. Not the push. Not the phone. Not even her silence. It was that look. That nothing look. Like I had never mattered. Like all the history between us was paper in the rain. So I walked out. And she didn't follow. Again, I didn't go home right away. I wandered for almost 2 hours with a cracked phone, a bruised elbow, and that surreal fog in my chest that only comes after you've been humiliated by someone you still love more than you should. There's a kind of silence that follows betrayal, not the peaceful kind. The kind that rings in your ears like you're standing too close to an explosion that no one else heard. I ended up at an all-night laundromat, even though I didn't bring any clothes to wash. I just sat there watching someone else's jeans spin in a dryer while I tried to figure out if I was the crazy one. If maybe I was overreacting. If maybe it really was a harmless dare. Maybe I should have laughed with them. Maybe I was just too sensitive. That's what Sadie always said. You take things too personally, Graham. It's exhausting. And maybe she was right. Maybe if I'd laughed and played along, I wouldn't be sitting in a laundromat at 11:27 p.m. with an ice pack made from a frozen water bottle I bought for $1.25. I checked my phone. No missed calls. No texts. No "Hey, are you okay?" Not even a meme or emoji. And in that absence, something shifted in me. Something slow but irreversible. Because when someone you love makes you feel invisible, the first time hurts. The second time makes you angry. But the third time? The third time changes your wiring. I finally got back to our apartment around midnight. It was dark except for the TV screen, paused on some home renovation show we never finished. She was already asleep, or pretending to be. Her makeup was still on. Her shoes were still near the couch. She hadn't even changed. Just curled up under a blanket and left the door unlocked like nothing had happened. I stood there for a long time watching her sleep, wondering how someone could look so peaceful after shoving their husband into the ground for a room full of coworkers. Was it always this easy for her? I didn't wake her. I went into the office, sat at my desk, and opened my notes app. Not to write anything poetic. I just started listing things. Not emotions. Not complaints. Facts. She pushed me in public. She laughed. She didn't apologize. She didn't call. She didn't check. She's asleep like it never happened. That list became something more. Something sharper. like a rope I could hold on to in case I started slipping again into those old patterns of defending her. It's strange how quickly love can twist into self-doubt. One minute you're building a future with someone. The next you're trying to figure out how to justify being treated like a background character in your own marriage. The next morning was worse. She acted normal. Like eerily normal. Made coffee. Scrolled Instagram. Asked if I wanted eggs. Didn't mention the restaurant. Didn't ask how I was feeling. And I couldn't bring myself to ask her either, because if I had to ask whether I mattered, then I already had my answer. But something inside me wanted to test her, just to see how deep the detachment ran. So I asked, casually, "Hey, do you remember what you said before you pushed me last night?" She blinked, like she didn't expect that question during scrambled eggs and morning radio. Then she laughed, small, airy, like it didn't matter. "Oh my God, are you still on about that?" "Babe, it was a joke. Adrian dared me. It wasn't personal. You're such a drama king sometimes." She kissed my forehead like that was supposed to fix it. Like affection after cruelty was enough to reset the game. And the worst part? For a moment, I let her. I told myself maybe it was just a joke. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe if I tried harder, she'd come back to the version of herself I used to know. The one who made me tea when I had migraines. The one who danced in the kitchen to Stevie Nicks in her socks. The one who once said, "If anyone ever hurt you, I'd wreck them." But that version of her didn't exist anymore. Or maybe she never did. Still, I played along. Ate the eggs. Nodded at her story about work. Smiled when she kissed my cheek and told me to lighten up. Then I went into the office, sat down, and opened that notes app again. This time, I changed the title from list to something else. Exit strategy. The watch was what finally broke the illusion. Not the push, not the silence, not even the laughter. A stupid, gold-plated watch she had no business owning. It showed up 3 days after the dinner. I noticed it when she came back from work, wrist flicking too casually, that fresh metallic glint catching the overhead light as she opened a package of vegan pesto like she hadn't publicly humiliated her husband less than a week ago. It wasn't hers. I knew that immediately. Sadie hated watches. Said they made her wrist feel trapped. That was her exact word, trapped. She'd only ever worn one, years ago, during some minimalist phase, and ditched it within a month. So when I saw this new one, thick-banded, a luxury brand I couldn't pronounce, with a square face and diamond accents, I didn't say anything at first. I just stared. She must have caught the look because she pulled her wrist back slightly, not hiding it, but definitely noticing my reaction. "It's from the team," she said too quickly. Sort of a congratulations gift. They pulled in. "You know, for the quarterlies." "The team?" I asked, forcing my voice not to crack. "The same team that dared you to shove your husband in public." She rolled her eyes. "Graham, can you not? That's done. We moved on." "No," I said, folding my arms. "You moved on." She shrugged. "Fine. Me. Whatever." Then she turned her back to me and started humming. Humming. Like that was going to drown out the tension snapping between us like exposed wires. I stood there, trying to understand how a woman could be this emotionally Teflon-coated. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was fascinated, studying her like an archaeologist trying to understand a language I used to speak but had long since forgotten. Later that night, while she was in the shower, I looked up the watch. Just typed in a rough description and let the internet do the rest. Found it in seconds. Retail price, $2,495. There is no way her coworkers bought that. Not on their salaries. Not for a team gift. Not unless there was more to it. And I could feel it, that itch in my gut that said this wasn't about the watch. It was about what it represented. A quiet transaction behind my back. Something I wasn't supposed to question. I didn't confront her. I just observed. I started noticing patterns. Late-night texts from names I'd never heard before. Meetings that ran unusually long. A hotel charge buried under Uber receipts. Team off-site, she claimed. But her story changed twice. First it was in Midtown. Then suddenly, it was out near the airport. She began locking her phone. She never used to do that. Even when she worked on sensitive files, she'd leave it open on the coffee table. But now it was glued to her like a prosthetic. Even in the bathroom. Even in the shower, she had started taking it in with her and playing music from it. Or at least, that's what she told me. So I tested her. Nothing invasive. Nothing illegal. Just subtle things. I asked her twice what Adrian's girlfriend's name was. She gave me 2 different answers. I asked what restaurant they went to after the watch gift. She said Thai, but I found an untouched takeout container from an Italian place in her gym bag. Still, no smoking gun, just cracks. And then the real clue came not from her, but from me, or rather, what she said to me. It was a Saturday. We were walking through a flea market because it used to be our thing before she outgrew it. Sadie walked 5 feet ahead, texting, barely acknowledging the vendors we passed. I stopped at a stall selling old vinyls. The guy running it nodded at me, and I smiled. Sadie turned around, glanced over her shoulder, and said, "You're like a sad little side character in someone else's novel." She didn't even mean it as an insult. She said it offhand, like it was some kind of quirky compliment. But it landed with the force of a punch. Because that was exactly how I'd started to feel. Like a forgotten narrative thread she didn't know how to tie off. So she just left me dangling in her story, useless and unwanted. That night, I waited until she fell asleep. I sat on the couch with the lights off and scrolled through our text history, going back months. I wasn't looking for proof of cheating. I didn't want screenshots or names or receipts. I just wanted to see when she stopped being mine. It wasn't obvious. There wasn't a single moment or phrase. It was the absence that got me. Less warmth. Fewer exclamation points. No more inside jokes. Her texts became dry, clipped, efficient. I realized that Sadie hadn't left me. Not yet. But she had already stopped returning. The strange thing is, even after all that, I still wanted to believe she loved me. That's the most humiliating part to admit. It wasn't the push. It wasn't the silence. It wasn't even the watch. It was the fact that some cracked, tired part of me kept whispering, maybe she's just going through something. That's what you do when you've built your whole identity around someone else's presence. You rewrite their cruelty as confusion, their distance as stress, their contempt as temporary. You wait. You rationalize. You turn betrayal into a puzzle that can be solved if only you try hard enough. That's where I was. Pathetic, I know. But things shifted the morning I caught her smiling at the bathroom mirror. She thought I was asleep. The door was cracked open just enough. I'd woken up to grab some water and saw the light under the frame. I remember thinking it was weird. Sadie never got up before me on weekends. She valued her sleep like it was sacred. I paused outside the door, not because I was snooping, but because I heard her laugh, soft, breathy, the kind of laugh you only use on someone you want. She wasn't on a call. She wasn't holding her phone. She was just standing there, in front of the mirror, smiling, whispering something I couldn't hear. Over and over again. I should have walked away, but I didn't. I inched closer, leaned slightly until I could see just enough. She was fixing her hair, wearing a sweatshirt that wasn't hers, definitely not one of mine. It was a faded navy hoodie with a logo I didn't recognize. Something foreign. Something that had no place in our closet. She pulled the hood over her head and stared at herself in the mirror like she was trying to become someone else. Or maybe remember who she really was. Her lips moved again. She whispered something I finally caught. "He thinks I don't know." And then she smiled wider. That moment shattered something in me. Not because it proved anything. I still didn't know what she meant, or who she was talking about. But it wasn't what a person does alone in front of a mirror at 6:15 a.m. on a Saturday. It was the kind of moment people have when they're rehearsing, preparing, when they think no one's watching. That same day, I started checking our shared bank account. She didn't know I still had access. We'd merged our accounts after we got married, then quietly separated them after one of our spaced talks, but the joint one was still there. Mostly unused, mostly forgotten, but not by her. There were small charges, almost unnoticeable. A hotel spa in a town we'd never visited. A flower delivery under a fake name. A recurring charge labeled Club Martel. I looked it up, a private events club with an annual membership that cost more than my monthly paycheck. Not her style at all. Sadie hated exclusivity. Said it made her feel like she was pretending to be someone she wasn't. Apparently, she wasn't pretending anymore. What scared me most wasn't the money. It was the intention. These weren't impulse buys. They were curated, hidden, disguised under layers of normalcy, like someone who wipes their prints off a doorknob they never should have touched. And then, just as I was digging through the last 3 months of transaction history, I got a call. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. No message. 2 minutes later, another call. Same number. I answered. There was a pause. Then a voice, soft, male, uncertain. "Is this Graham?" "Yeah, who's this?" Another pause. Then, "You don't know me. But I think." I think we need to talk about Sadie. I stood completely still. Who are you? I asked, my throat dry. She told me you were her brother, he said. But that doesn't seem right. I remember gripping the phone so tightly that my knuckles went white. The man's voice wasn't angry or threatening. It was cautious, like someone picking their way across ice they're not sure will hold. She told me you were her brother, he repeated, softer now, like he was embarrassed. The room tilted a little. What's your name? I asked, even though I already knew his name didn't matter. He hesitated before answering. Eli. That was it. Just Eli. No last name. I could hear traffic in the background, a horn, maybe a bus door closing. Look, he said, I don't want drama. I didn't even know she was married until last week. She's been telling me things, and I just needed to make sure I wasn't crazy. I sat down hard on the edge of the couch, my legs suddenly heavy. What things? My voice sounded small, even to me. He inhaled. That you were her brother. That you were staying with her for a while. That you'd had some breakdown. The last word hung between us like smoke. My jaw clenched. She said I was unstable? He didn't answer directly. I'm sorry, he said instead. She's not who I thought she was. He cut himself off like he was about to reveal too much. I could hear him swallow. I don't even know why I'm calling. I guess, because you sound like someone who deserves to know. I didn't yell. I didn't ask for details. I didn't even hang up right away. I just sat there staring at the blank TV screen while this stranger exhaled on the other end of the line. My mind was a flood of images. The watch, the hoodie, the mirror, the dare. All the little fractures I'd been taping over were suddenly a canyon I could see the bottom of. Eli. I said finally, my voice quieter than I expected. How long have you been seeing her? He paused. 6 months. Maybe 7. I did the math automatically. That was before the rooftop party. Before the bowling alley. Before everything that had made me think I was just imagining things. He must have sensed my silence because his tone shifted, became almost apologetic. I didn't call to blow up your life, he said. I just couldn't be part of her story anymore. She's not who she says she is, man. Then the line went dead. No click. No goodbye. Just silence. I sat there for a long time, the phone pressed to my ear like it might give me answers if I held it close enough. In that moment I realized that whatever Sadie had been doing, it wasn't spontaneous cruelty. It wasn't boredom. It was a pattern. A game. Something she was perfecting. She wasn't just testing me anymore. She was practicing. When she came home that evening, the first thing she did was look at me like she was checking a script. Rough day? She asked lightly, setting down her bag. She had a new lipstick on, darker than usual, a shade she once told me she hated. I stared at her and tried to picture the version of Sadie who once fell asleep on my shoulder during thunderstorms. But all I could see was a stranger with my wife's face wearing a watch she never should have owned. I had a call today, I said, watching her reaction carefully. Her body tensed just slightly, like a dog hearing a distant whistle. Oh, she said. Who was it? Someone who thought I was your brother. I replied, keeping my voice steady. That cracked something in her mask. Just a flicker, a flash of fear, then gone. She recovered almost instantly, gave a soft laugh that didn't reach her eyes. What a weird prank, she said. People are so creepy. But I wasn't looking at her words anymore. I was looking at her pupils, her shoulders, the subtle tremor in her left hand. That's when I knew for sure. She wasn't going to stop. She wasn't going to confess. She wasn't even going to acknowledge it. To her, I wasn't a person she'd wronged. I was an obstacle she'd already stepped over. Later that night, when she was in the shower humming some tune I didn't recognize, I unlocked the drawer in my desk where I'd started keeping my notes. My exit strategy file had grown thicker than I realized. Dates, times, receipts, details. I wasn't even sure why I'd been keeping them. Habit, maybe, or survival instinct. But as I flipped through the pages, I realized something chilling. There was enough here to build a map. And on that map, I wasn't at the center anymore. I was barely a footnote. For the first time in months, I didn't feel numb. I felt something sharper. Not revenge. Not rage. Something colder, cleaner. The knowledge that I was done being her rehearsal dummy. Done being the punchline. Done being erased. I closed the folder, sat back in my chair, and whispered to myself the same words she had whispered to the mirror that morning. He thinks I don't know. But I said it differently. I said it like a promise. I wasn't looking for it. That's the thing. I wasn't sitting there with a magnifying glass and a villain's laugh, digging through her life for evidence. I had already made peace with the fact that the woman sleeping next to me was no longer mine. Maybe she never was. But fate, or maybe just her sloppiness, gave me something she didn't mean to. It was a Tuesday morning. She'd left her laptop open on the kitchen counter while running late for a client brunch, whatever that meant. Her coffee cup still steamed beside the trackpad, half finished as usual. Normally, I wouldn't have touched it. But this time, something caught my eye. It was a calendar notification that popped up in the corner of her screen. Just a flash before it faded. But I saw it. One line. 7 words. Pre-dinner check-in. Hotel Larkspur, 5 p.m. There was no meeting title. No business name. Just that. And she never mentioned anything about it to me. Not during her rushed morning. Not in the texts she sent later. All safe, sterile updates like running behind and don't forget trash night. Hotel Larkspur was on the other side of town. A boutique place. Trendy. Discreet. A place you'd go when you didn't want to be seen by people who knew your name. I sat there for a long time, the laptop open, cursor blinking in the empty browser bar. My reflection stared back at me in the dark screen like even he didn't know what I was about to do. I didn't snoop. I didn't hack anything. I didn't have to. She had left her email signed in. The invitation was there, buried in a subfolder labeled Consulting. A calendar event with a name I didn't recognize. No notes. No agenda. Just the place, the time, and the name, Noah, in the guest list. I copied the address into my phone and closed the laptop like it was something radioactive. I didn't rage. I didn't scream. I didn't even feel surprise. Just a strange sort of detachment, like I was a character in a dream I couldn't wake up from. That evening, I didn't say anything. I let her go, watched her adjust her collar in the mirror, heard her hum something off-key as she dabbed perfume onto her wrists. It wasn't the one I'd given her for her birthday. She hadn't worn that in months. This one was sharper, sexier, confident. "You look nice," I said as she grabbed her keys. She paused, caught off guard by the compliment. "Thanks," she replied, blinking like she wasn't sure if it was sarcasm. Then she was gone. I waited 15 minutes before I left. I didn't follow her car. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to see anything. But I drove to Larkspur anyway, parked across the street, and sat in my car watching the amber lights flicker on across the building's Art Deco exterior. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. The air inside the car was stale and too quiet. Every car door that slammed nearby made my stomach twitch. And then I saw her. She wasn't alone. He was tall, confident, clean-cut in a tailored navy jacket. He walked like someone who'd never had to apologize for existing. They met near the awning, and she smiled in a way she hadn't smiled at me in over a year. That smile, soft, magnetic, entirely rehearsed, like it had been saved for this moment. She reached for his hand first. I don't know what I expected. A hug, maybe. A handshake. But she kissed him. Not quickly. Not casually. Not the kind of kiss you give someone new. The kind you give someone who already knows your apartment code. And I just sat there, engine off, watching it happen like I was at a theater and forgot the play was about me. My hands didn't shake. My chest didn't tighten. I didn't have one of those movie moment breakdowns. Instead, I just opened the Notes app on my phone and typed a single line. She doesn't even look back. And she didn't. Not once. Not as they walked inside. Not as the door closed. She never looked over her shoulder, never checked the street, never considered who might be watching. That was the most brutal part. Not the affair. Not the lie. Not even the kiss. It was the ease. The total, effortless erasure of me. I drove home with the windows down. I wanted the wind in my face, wanted to feel something. The city looked different now. Colder. Flatter. Like someone had taken the saturation out of it while I wasn't paying attention. I parked in the garage, walked inside, and fed the cat like it was any other night. Because that's what you do when your marriage ends quietly. You keep moving. You take out the trash. You wash the dishes. You feed the cat. And then you begin to plan. There's a drawer in our hallway table that Sadie thinks I never use. She keeps her spare keys in there. For the car, the mailbox, the gym locker she hasn't visited since she hurt her ankle last spring. I've passed by that drawer 1,000 times without touching it. Because some unspoken rule existed between us about personal spaces. Not sacred, exactly, just invisible walls we silently agreed to never cross. But after what I saw at the Larkspur Hotel, something inside me shifted. Not a rage, not a desire to confront or even expose her. Just a need to understand the scale of it. I had spent months tiptoeing around the edges of this thing, like a man circling a house that had already burned down. Now I needed to know how deep the ashes went. That Sunday morning, she went out for a Pilates class, or so she claimed. Her leggings were spotless, her mat untouched by sweat, and she wore the hoodie I'd seen her in during that mirror scene, the one I still didn't recognize. I waited 10 minutes after the door clicked shut, then opened the drawer. The keys were all there. Nothing surprising. Except one. It was smaller than the rest, older, tarnished at the edges. No label. No ring. Just tucked beneath an expired gym pass and a coupon for a restaurant that closed 3 years ago. I'd seen that key before. Once, maybe twice. She used to keep it in her nightstand, then moved it here quietly, without telling me. I held it in my hand for a moment, weighing its presence. It wasn't for our apartment. Wasn't for our car. Definitely not for the gym. So what the hell was it for? I began checking everything in the apartment. Calmly. Systematically. Like a man defusing a bomb he built himself, but forgot how to disarm. I checked both closets, under the bed, inside her old jewelry boxes. Nothing. I didn't even know what I was looking for until I found the small black case in the back of her bookshelf, tucked behind a row of unread self-help books with fake titles like Limitless Ambition and Designing the New You. The case was matte leather. Lockable. Discreet. Not dusty enough to be forgotten, not polished enough to be loved. The key fit. It clicked open like it had been waiting. Inside were 3 items. First, a flip phone. Off-brand. Cheap. No charger. Not her usual sleek, overstyled smartphone. This thing was pure function. I didn't turn it on. I didn't have to. I knew exactly what kind of phone this was. Second, a folded piece of paper. Not a letter. Not a note. Just a printed list. Names. Dates. Hotel names. Numbers next to each one. I recognized none of the names, but I knew the format. It was a log. Organized. Cold. Efficient. Third, a photograph. It wasn't of me. It was of her, sitting beside a man I'd never seen. They were in a booth. A dim bar, maybe. She was holding a cocktail and smiling in a way that wasn't candid. It was practiced. Controlled. She was looking at the camera, but not at whoever was holding it. Her expression was the same one I'd seen her wear the night she kissed the man outside the Larkspur. The photo wasn't romantic. It wasn't even incriminating. It was worse. It was intentional. This wasn't an affair. It was something else. Something curated. There were no love notes. No sexts. No handwritten confessions of regret. Just this box. Clean, calculated, compartmentalized. Like her double life wasn't an accident, or even a thrill. It was a job. Or a project. Something she'd been doing for a long time, possibly even before me. I placed everything back exactly where I found it, locked the box, and returned the key to its hiding spot in the drawer. Then I sat on the couch for nearly an hour without moving, my mind trying to catch up to what I already knew. Sadie wasn't cheating on me. Sadie was collecting people. That's the only way I can describe it. These weren't love affairs. These weren't passionate mistakes or cries for attention. These were precise, orchestrated connections with men she'd categorized and documented like samples in a private archive. Some part of her was observing them. Us. Me. Watching what we'd do. How far she could push. What we'd tolerate. How quickly we'd fold. I started wondering if it had ever been real at all. The way she'd laughed at my jokes when we first met. The nights we stayed up watching conspiracy documentaries while wrapped in a blanket. The way she said, "I see you," instead of "I love you," like it meant more. Had that been hers? Or something she borrowed from someone else? The questions kept piling up until they blurred into one single truth. I didn't know who my wife was. I didn't know what she wanted. I didn't know where this ended. But I knew now that I had never truly been her partner. I'd been a participant. A role. A character she auditioned, cast, and then rewrote when the story no longer needed me. And the worst part? I still hadn't figured out what kind of story she thought she was telling. For days, I waited for the crash. I expected the confrontation, the yelling, the crocodile tears. I imagined her standing in the living room, arms folded, spinning some half-truth about how I was the one who changed, how she never meant to hurt me, how it wasn't what it looked like. But it never came. Instead, Sadie carried on like the walls weren't closing in. She still took her vitamins, still left her mugs in the sink, still asked me to grab oat milk on my way home. Like we were still playing house in the ruins of something long abandoned. I kept up appearances too. For a while. Out of habit, out of fear, maybe even out of curiosity. But my mind was elsewhere. Every smile I gave was hollow. Every touch she offered landed like a lie. And then, one evening, just a few days after I found the box, I sat across from her at dinner and realized I wasn't afraid anymore. I didn't need revenge. I didn't want answers. I didn't even want an apology. I just wanted out. Not dramatically, not cruelly, just cleanly. So I did something terrifyingly simple. I told the truth. I waited until she was scrolling her phone, plate half-eaten, thumb rhythmically tapping through the lives of people she didn't know. I looked at her, really looked at her, and said calmly, "Sadie, I know everything." She blinked. For a moment, just one, I saw something crack in her, a flicker of panic, of calculation, of instinct. But she didn't speak. She just tilted her head and waited. "I know about the hotels," I said. "The emails. The list. The box in the bookcase. I know who you are, Sadie. Or at least, who you've been pretending to be." Silence. Then, softly, and that was it. No denial. No fake confusion. Just a single word, casual and venomous, as if daring me to do something about it. I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and said, "This is the last night I'll ever see you." I didn't pack a bag. I'd done that the day before. I didn't scream or cry or slam the door. I walked out like a man finally remembering the weight of his own name. And the strangest thing? She didn't follow. Not that night. Not the next. Not ever. I moved into a sublet in a part of town I'd never lived in. A small, slightly drafty apartment above a used bookstore. It smelled like old paper and rain and freedom. The first morning I woke up there, I sat on the floor and drank coffee out of a chipped mug while sunlight spilled through the blinds like an apology. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a background character. I felt real. Weeks passed. I got a cat. Started going to the park again. I took long walks without checking my phone. I deleted old texts. I wrote things that weren't lists. I stopped flinching when people laughed too loudly in public. And one day, months later, I ran into Eli, the man who had called me that night. We were both at a bookstore, of all places. He recognized me first. There was a brief silence, the kind filled with memories that neither of us wanted to reopen. But eventually we laughed. Small talk turned into coffee. Coffee turned into a strange, unexpected friendship. He told me he was in therapy. Said he'd stopped blaming himself. I told him I understood. We didn't talk about her again, because she didn't deserve the space. Some stories don't need dramatic endings. No explosions. No grand confessions. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away and not look back. That was the story she had been writing. But it's not the one I'm telling anymore. Mine starts now. With silence. With peace. With the kind of love that begins quietly, and this time, with me.